This video contains spoilers for the second season of Arcane. You all have been warned. Each season of Arcane is divided into 3 acts, a structure that has long been recognized as a classic of storytelling. Act 1 introduces the plot, Act 2 reveals the confrontation, and Act 3 leads to the conclusion. This model is not only time-tested but also ideal for creating tension and exciting plot development. However, some fans have theorized that this structure may be a reference to theater. In theatrical productions, the play is also divided into acts, and the intermission echoes the weekly breaks between episodes of the Arcane series. This parallel becomes especially noticeable if we pay attention to the details of the opening, where many moments suggest a connection with theater, opera, and performances, as we will see later. And perhaps we will start by analyzing the key scenes of the opening. Why did I say key? Because as it turned out during the frame-by-frame review, I found something incredible. And of course, I will definitely tell and show you guys these details. The opening begins with Vi running her hand across her cheek, smearing her name tattoo. This gesture can be interpreted as a symbolic erasing of the makeup, so to say. A mask is usually used in performances. It is in this moment that the first reference to the theater, which I mentioned earlier, is hidden. As for the deeper meaning, this gesture can be interpreted as a symbol of an internal change. In the first season, Vi found herself at a crossroads where she had to find herself again. In the second season, however, she faces even more serious challenges, such as pain, internal turmoil, and surprisingly a loss of direction. This applies not only to her complicated relationship with her sister, but also to her painful breakup with Caitlin, which leaves a deep mark on her soul. As the story progresses, we see Vi's sister Jinx appearing in the shadow of Vi. This image refers to the events of the first season when Jinx sought protection in her sister, seeing her as the main support and the figure that defines her life. But then the girl gets to her feet and steps out of Vi's shadow. This moment symbolizes the events of the second season where Jinx's development as a person takes place. She tries to leave the past behind, stop clinging to old attachments, and gain independence despite the pain and internal contradictions. As for the ray of light that shines on Vi's face, I have a theory. This light is nothing more than a metaphorical embodiment of the lines of fate that lead the characters through their trials. Later on, these rays of fate will accompany us throughout the entirety of the opera, appearing at key moments, just when other characters appear in the frame. In the moment when Vi, something symbolic happens. The line of fate smoothly passes from Vi to Jinx. Their stories are deeply intertwined, and all the events that happen to one invariably affect the other. If you freeze the frame, you can see that Jinx is standing on Echo's line of fate. This detail hints at their deep connection, which becomes especially evident in the 7th episode. There, Echo finds himself in a parallel reality, where their relationship takes on a completely different tone, uniting them not only with strong bonds of friendship but also with romantic feelings. Next, we see Echo in the frame. His shadow on the floor takes the form of clock hands, symbolizing the passage of time. This image is a reference to his Z drive, invented in the 3rd act of the 2nd season, as well as to his gaming abilities. Note that the arrows make 4 ticks. That is the number of seconds his ultimate can rewind time. The rays that Echo deftly dodges are the threads of fate, and this is where his uniqueness comes in. He's the only one who purposefully avoids them, which goes hand in hand with his ability to turn back time. Echo doesn't just resist fate, he changes it as he sees fit, over and over again. This scene symbolizes his determination to change the course of events and intervene in the fate of the world in the decisive final act. In the next shot, we see a mask on the floor which Victor reaches for. A ray of light falls on the mask, a thread of fate that invariably connects the characters. However, the most interesting thing is that the ray passing through the mask splits into 2, symbolizing 2 parallel lines of fate, or threads of fate. This image resonates with the events of the last episodes where Jace, faced with a parallel reality, saw a different outcome of the world's fate, a place where all life has ceased to exist. Upon returning to his world, Jace realized that his actions could wake Victor up and thus prevent this horrific scenario. The mask Victor picks up is filled with deep symbolism. On the one hand, it can be a reference to the Phantom of the Opera, a creature frozen between life and death, just like Victor himself, balancing on the edge of human and machine. This image also resonates with the theatrical motifs that permeate the opera. On the other hand, the mask may resemble the painting Three Masks by the famous artist Ray Dunley. His works have gained worldwide recognition and attracted the attention of such famous collectors as Johnny Depp and the late director Alan William Parker. Perhaps Riot were inspired by his work when they were creating this scene. However, I have my own, perhaps crazy theory. The moment where Victor sits and looks thoughtfully at the mask in his hand evokes associations with William Shakespeare's play Hamlet. In the popular visualization of this play, Hamlet holds the skull of Yorick. In the series, it can be symbolically compared to the mask and utters the famous phrase, "To be or not to be, that is the question." In the second season, Victor, like Hamlet, is in a state of internal conflict and identity crisis. He's trying to find answers to painful questions about his place in the universe and the choice of the path that will determine the future of the world. In the scene with Ambessa Medarda, we see that the line of fate passes over her but then breaks off on her shoulder. After that, the line reappears, starting from the floor and continuing on the wall. On the one hand, this can be explained by the laws of physics. Light is refracted and cannot follow an object. However, if the creators wanted to, they could have changed the direction of the beam so that it continuously passed through Ambessa and went on. Most likely, this scene hints at the fate of this character in the third act. The line of fate encompasses her but then breaks off, symbolizing her death. After that, the line continues its path without her, emphasizing that further events will unfold without Ambessa's participation. The pose of Ambessa Medarda carries many references. First, it resembles the famous Roman statue of Tiberinus with a cornucopia. Only Ambessa is holding a black rose instead of a horn, a symbol of a powerful organization with which the Medarda family has serious conflicts in the second season. By the way, my channel already has a video dedicated to this mysterious and influential group. I will definitely put a link to it in the description below. In addition, her clothes, red pieces of cloth, evoke associations with the scarlet tunic of a Lannister, a trainer and owner of gladiators in ancient Rome. My apologies if I mispronounced that. Ambessa, like a Lannister, is an influential figure who, relatively speaking, owns her own quote-unquote gladiators, the Noxian army, which we see in the second season of Arcane. And what about the theater? Here, a hint of the Lannister leads us to the amphitheater, to the Colosseum where gladiatorial fights once took place. These spectacles can be considered an ancient prototype of a theatrical performance, the same play, only with weapons in hand and the price of life. In the next scene, Ambessa holds a black rose, a symbol of a powerful organization that threatens her family. Two rays of fate pass through this flower, which seem to symbolize the intertwining of the fates of Ambessa, her daughter Mel, and the Black Rose organization. For a moment, we see Ambessa's hand resting directly on the spot where Mel's head is located. This symbolic moment emphasizes the mother's desire to control her daughter, demanding unconditional obedience. This detail perfectly conveys the complexity of their relationship, the conflict between the desire for power and personal freedom. The scene then shifts to Mel, who, having been drawn into dangerous intrigues through her mother, is now forced to suffer the threats of the Black Rose. This shot is filled with deep symbolism. It conveys a metaphor for violence, whether it is physical pressure or psychological influence. But it also contains a reference to the Theater of Shadows, which we will talk about later, because this moment is not the only one that is connected with the mysterious and gloomy world of shadow allegories. A little later, a shot appears on the screen where Mel fiercely fights and resists the Black Rose, holding them back, a moment that finds its confirmation in the third act of the second season, and then on the couch where her mother used to sit. She is the one sitting there now. This symbolizes that her mother is gone, and now it is up to her daughter, Mel, to continue the fight against the Black Rose. Interestingly, the fallen petals are slightly deflated, which I think may hint at the weakening of the sinister organization, although it is hard to say exactly why. The next shot takes us to Jinx, who is standing with a flag symbolizes her revolutionary activities in the series. Despite the fact that she did not aspire to be a leader or symbol for the people of the Undercity, fate made her one. This scene also contains a vivid reference to the famous painting Liberty Leading the People by French artist Eugène Delacroix. Jinx, like the figure on the canvas, becomes the embodiment of struggle and change, even if she does not realize it. The following scenes dedicated to Caitlyn hide deeper references and meaning. The first thing that catches our eye in the scene is the backstage area to the right of the heroine, which clearly refers to the theater. From the very beginning of her appearance, she seems to be standing behind the scenes, worrying and then putting on her ceremonial expression she enters the illuminated stage. This can be interpreted as her path to power and fulfillment of her official duties, as well as a reflection of her relationship with General Mbessa. In both cases, she's playing a role that she has to fulfill. And then Caitlyn realizes that the crown is not only a symbol of power but also a heavy burden. Just a little later, in the sad scene with Caitlyn, we will hear a song called Heavy is the Crown, which underscores the weight of responsibility she feels. In addition, the shadow we see on the wall, on the one hand, resembles the shape of a crown, but on the other hand, it is a reference to William Shakespeare's play Macbeth, where the main theme is the tragedy of the weight of power and the bloody price that has to be paid for it. Caitlyn's story perfectly resonates with this plot, emphasizing the gravity of her new role. At first glance, the scenes with Caitlyn and Vi do not seem to have any hidden complex meanings, but attention is drawn to the way the lines of their fate intertwine on their hands. Then, the intertwined common line of fate passes through them and disappears, after which we see them pushing away from each other. This visual decision is a reference to the painful gap between them, to the misunderstandings and conflicts we saw in the first two acts of the series. As for Jace, his scene can be interpreted in different ways, depending on how the viewer perceives it. The light that hits his face at first resembles a spotlight that is directed at actors on stage during their performances. However, if we dig deeper, we might have two possible interpretations. The first is that, as in the opening, where he's blinded by the spotlight, in reality he is blinded and stupefied by the world he saw when he touched the world rune, a world that clouded his perception. The second option is, on the contrary, a moment of epiphany. He realizes what his experiments with Hextech and world runes can lead to, and comes to the realization that in order to avoid a catastrophic outcome, he needs to change something in his own world. Let us go back to the concept of the Theater of Shadows that I mentioned earlier. After we analyzed all the frames in the opening, I noticed another important detail: the image of shadows. Echo's clock hands, Caitlyn's crown, Jinx's crowd, Vi's quarrel, Mel's arms around her are not random elements. They all refer to the Theater of Shadows, which came from the East and became an integral part of French culture. These performances later became known as Phantasmagoria and later Chinese Shadows. The performances of one certain Belgian artist, Etienne Gaspard Robert, were especially popular. The Phantasmagoria figures he created influenced the development of cinema, especially in the horror genre. Thus, the whole opening is a metaphor for a theatrical performance combining elements of musical, shadow theater, and acrobatics, as for example in the scene with Echo who turns away from the light. What's behind this? The characters live a fate that was predetermined and imposed on them from the outside. Their task is to find their own way, get rid of control, and become masters of their lives, to step out of the shadows and into the light. In addition to numerous references to theater, opera, literature, and cultural heritage, there is another interesting detail in the opening. Each frame looks as if it was shot on film. This effect is enhanced by a characteristic noise, flashy white dots, which were commonly found in old films created on celluloid. Here are some examples of these shots. In one of these shots of Caitlyn, you can see the number 34 in the film. This may be just a coincidence, but I'm inclined to assume that there is something more behind it. Perhaps this is a reference to the famous 34th frame of Kremenishchenko. Some people believe that this shot depicts something supernatural, while others see it as a sort of a screaming face, 2 eyes, cheekbones, a triangular nose, and a wide open mouth. Interestingly though, Caitlyn is actually screaming in the opening shot, which may be a kind of parallel. But this is just my guess, and the numbers could mean something completely different. Given the way Riot skillfully weaves symbolism into every detail, it is hard to imagine that this element appeared by accident. If you have your own guesses, be sure to share them in the comments. We'll figure it out together. And now, as promised, let us take a look at the additional footage that differs in the openings of different episodes. It is worth noting that these inserts serve as a kind of a teaser for the events that take place in the respective episode. Episode 1, Victor merging with the Wild Rune. This moment takes place after the Jinx missile has destroyed the Piltover Council building. The second shot appears after the scene with Vi and Caitlyn, a cross with the Piltover sign on it. Episode 2, when Jinx makes her characteristic gesture with her fingers as if she was shooting, a shot of a wanted poster appears for a moment. In the next moment, when the shots change, we see a girl named Isha. After the shot of Vi, a scene is shown where she, along with Caitlyn and other enforcers, goes down to the Undercity in search of Jinx. Episode 3, the scene with Vi and Jinx shows a vivid moment of their fierce fight, a foreshadowing of the dramatic episode that will unfold later. The image of the Wild Rune appears for a moment before the shot of Jace. And in the scene with Vi and Caitlyn, we see Caitlyn standing with her back to the camera. This shot represents her acceptance of her new role as commander of the Piltover army. Episode 4. First, we see a shot of Silco. Then right after the scene with Victor, we see the eyes of Warwick, who is released for the first time in this episode. And finally, after the moment with Jinx and her flag, we see the graffiti of her famous monkey, a symbol of the chaos she leaves behind. Episode 5. A painting depicting Jinx and Vander. After the scene with Victor, this time Vander's eyes flash instead of Warwick's. It is in this episode that he has a glimpse of memories and he finally remembers his adopted daughters. Before the moment with Vi, an image of a two-headed Cerberus appears on the screen, the same pattern we see on her jacket. This symbol is a reminder of her tumultuous past and the internal struggle that is still part of her journey. Episode 6. A shot of Isha repeating Jinx's gesture. After the scene with Victor, Warwick's face appears on the screen again, but this time it is shrouded in a red veil, a complete state of madness. When Victor puts on the mask, we see his figure in a mysterious dimension that he calls Chaos. However, for me personally, this realm is more like an endless space. Episode 7. Between the scenes with Jinx and Echo, a medallion appears, the same one that Echo gives to Powder in the parallel reality in this episode. Before the scene with Jace, we see a shot from a gloomy parallel world where all events end in tragedy for each of the characters. In the shot with Vi, two lines of light, the lines or rays of fate that is, form a cross on her face. This symbol is connected with the events in a parallel reality where Vi turns out to be dead, which is emphasized in the opening with this visual hint. And in the scene with Echo, Heimerdinger face flashes, which is now a fond memory for Echo. Episode 8. We see Jinx with her hair down, tears painted on her face and despair. This is exactly how she appears to us in the cell where she was imprisoned. In the shot with Mel, there is an insert where she has already learned about her magical powers. In the last scene with Victor, a shot appears that shows a mechanical life form that is controlled by Victor in this episode. Episode 9. In the beginning, in the scene with Jinx and Vi, a shot flashes where they stand side by side, confronting the chaos that has engulfed the world. This is followed by an image of Warwick's face, already altered and enhanced by Victor with his technology. Particular attention is drawn to the shot with a cross on Caitlyn's face, located on the eye she lost in this episode. This symbolic element hints at her future appearance with a bandage hiding the injury, and the sequence ends with a shot of Victor's new appearance, emphasizing his final transformation. That is the end of our detailed analysis of the opening sequence. If I have missed something, please share your thoughts in the comments. I'm always happy to hear your ideas. Like and subscribe to become a regular visitor in my cozy tavern. Thank you for being with me today. See you soon for a glass of the best ale in Runeterra.